Hey guys, it's Lauren here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I am going to talk about the books I've read. This is going to be like a quarter year wrap up. So it's all the books I basically read from about January to mid-April, I would say. So it's really, don't tell anyone, but it's really more of a third of the way through the year wrap up, but we're just gonna call it a quarter year wrap up for the sake of for the sake of the views, you know? Like everyone likes a quarter year wrap up, no one likes a third of the year wrap up. It just doesn't sound as good. I don't know. My reading goal for the year is 22, and so far I've read 8 books. I feel like I've read like a wide variety of books, so if you're looking for recommendations as well, there should be something here for you that you will be interested in. And also everything that I read I really liked. I don't think I read anything below like a 4-star. Actually, I take that back. Well, at least like I don't think I've read anything that was below 3.75. That's what I'll say. Yeah, hopefully there's something here you'll enjoy. Hopefully there's something here you'll like. If not, you can just listen to me talk and ramble about books because I love them so much. Without further ado, let's just get right into it. As always, I have my trusty little iPad. I made a list. Let's get right into it, shall we? Here are the 8 books that I read and enjoyed for the first quarter of the year. So first of all, I read Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. Black Sun essentially is a story that it's like an epic sci-fi book, but if I were to like give it more specificity, it's like an epic sci-fi fantasy, and it's indigenous, and it basically follows the story of multiple people and multiple perspectives within a world where there's different tribes dedicated to different gods. So I think there's like a sea god, gods dedicated to different animals. That's the primary religion, but there's this other group of gods that exist, or this other religion that exists that is dedicated to the crow. And that's a big problem because the crow represents death, and it's basically anti-everything that this indigenous society has made themselves spoken for. There's this person that's supposed to become the crow god essentially, and he was raised to be that. So he's gonna be like this usurper? He's basically supposed to be like this dark horse going into it, and basically on the day of the Black Sun is when he is supposed to rise again, become this god that everyone's been looking for, and just destroy some shit, cause some havoc. And it follows the story of this new god. It also follows the story of this girl that's like this half human, half sea creature. A couple of other people. We basically follow a ton of different perspectives as this tension starts to build in the society. People are losing faith in the main church that is in charge. Honestly, the world of this was very well written. Like it was very like intense and vivid. It was just really good. But I guess for me, like one thing that just did not work as well was the fact that I just didn't connect as much with the characters. I think the crow god was interesting as a character, and so was the woman who was half human, half not human, like half creature of the sea. There's something missing, I think, for me when it came to character, because I'm usually a big fan of like big cast and a story, but I think the fact that like most of them didn't interact, and it just like I felt like I didn't connect as much with the characters as I would have wanted to. That's why I gave it a 4 instead of a 5-star, because it was a really intense world. I think they built up the tension pretty well within the story. It just wasn't necessarily like the perfect story for me, so I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Still a really enjoyable read, just like missing that character dynamic that I usually love to see so much in my books. Otherwise, the world building was excellent. I think the tension was also really good throughout the book, like leading up to like the day of the Black Sun. It messes a lot with temporality. There are flashbacks to like back when like the crow god was like a kid, and then you see how that affects his mannerisms as he moves through the world now. You kind of see like the social dynamics like between like each of the people. Like it was very well written, but just like the lack of etc, that just did not sell it for me. The next book I read was 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lit. I adored this book, okay? It's basically like this ancient Chinese, I believe, novel that follows the story of this girl named Shiori, and she is the princess of her kingdom. This kingdom was basically established by banishing the dragons and other magical beings from their society in order to live in peace. But one day, Shiori actually ends up exposing herself as a sorceress, someone that can practice magic, and she's been keeping it a secret from her family this entire time. Father, her stepmother, and then also her 6 brothers, of course. But one day she ends up exposing herself and she's running away from her fiance. Because of that day, it ends up becoming the catalyst of when her stepmother exposes herself also to be a sorceress and banishes her from the kingdom. And not only does she banish her from the kingdom, she also turns her brothers into cranes. She has this like big plot going on that has to do with the kingdom and the king, who is Shiori's father. So Shiori, like, being sent away with a bowl over her head, mute, basically unable to talk at all, Little Mermaid style, she ends up going off on a journey in order to find a way to transform her brothers back, because if she doesn't, they'll be stuck as cranes forever, and she has to find a way to do it without speaking either and like asking for help, because if she does speak, her brothers die. Yeah, that's the story. It's really, really well written. I think one thing I love about this book so much is that it's reminiscent of fairy tales, essentially. Like, it reads like a beautifully, almost like water painted fairy tale. Like, you can picture everything very vividly by the way the author describes the setting, the way the characters speak, and just like that dynamic. It's just very beautiful prose, I would say, so I really love that. Another thing I really enjoyed was the characters. Shiori was just like a really iconic character. I love her sass. I love her character development about the story. She starts off very, very immature, but still relatable in a way. She just grows to be such a strong character by the end of the story, so I really enjoyed that. Also, her brothers, I love this because I feel like in a lot of YA books, the main character doesn't usually have a sibling, or at least in a lot of popular ones, the main character doesn't usually have a sibling, or if they do have a sibling, it's like a younger sibling that doesn't talk much, someone that doesn't really like interact with in the story. In this, there are multiple siblings. There are 6 brothers, and they all just have their own unique personalities, which makes reading it very enjoyable. As someone with siblings myself, I just love whenever I see siblings in fiction, and whenever they're written well and believable. Like, they're not just like someone that like fawns over their sibling or something like that. They argue, they bicker, they just clash a lot, and I just like seeing that a lot. So I think the sibling dynamic was also written really well. I liked how complex some of the characters were. Like, there was some plot twists that happened that were like really, really interesting. The story just did so many things right. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think the one reason I didn't give it 5 stars was just because I liked it most when Shiori was traveling around, but then she ends up settling in like a foreign kingdom, and like I felt like the story decreased its momentum it was having, and I think that was the one thing I nitpicked about. But overall, it was a very, very enjoyable story. Like, take my word for it. So if you were thinking of picking up 6 Crimson Cranes, I would highly recommend it. It was a very good, colorful, just fantastical story. So yeah, would highly recommend. It's basically like reading a fairy tale. The next book I read was The Lead by Kylie Scott. In case you don't remember, or in case you're new to my channel, I read Play by Kylie Scott, which was, I believe, the 2nd book in like the Stage series. It's a series similar to kind of like the Talia Hibbert books, where it's like romantic relationships that are interconnected in some ways, but like each are individual, each have their own story and their own different dynamic. So Play kind of had the relationship between a drummer and then also just like a girl he ends up finding, and it was really nice, wholesome. I really enjoyed that book. This relationship that's in Lead is a bit more spicy, a bit more, one could say, problematic. So basically it follows the story of this girl who ends up finding a job with obviously this same band. She has to work with like the lead singer of the band, who's a drug addict, or like a former drug addict, and who has many, many personal problems that she has to help reckon with, because obviously she's his assistant. So she ends up living with him and eventually catching feelings, and it gets very messy from there. So this guy that she ends up working for, Jimmy, I believe his name is, he's just very emotionally unavailable. So they end up becoming friends, but despite the fact that they kind of like, she ends up having feelings for him and tells him that and wants to quit, he refuses to let her quit. He's like, no, no, no. I like you too much, you're doing good at your job, and I don't want to let you go. So we're gonna find a way to make you not have these feelings anymore. Yes, he actually persuades her to think that she can just somehow not have feelings, because that's how human beings work. It's not. So basically they try to do that throughout the entirety of the story. It's just this like give and take. Jimmy acts like so jealous at certain points, and he clearly has feelings for her, but he doesn't know what feelings are. He's not emotionally intelligent, so it just ends up being this big mess. A lot happens, like a lot of problematic shit happens, I'm not even gonna lie. But you know what kind of romance do we, like, everyone's a little bit of problematic dynamics in their romance, right? I ended up actually pretty much enjoying it, even though it was like, ooh, employee and their boss, I don't know how I feel about this, the power dynamics are a bit weird, and they were a bit weird, but I really did enjoy the book, despite its flaws. I did end up actually really enjoying the story, so if you don't mind a bit of a problematic romance, if you like the idea of a musician falling in love in just like all those weird rock star dynamics with normal people dynamics, I would recommend Lead. And I would recommend the rest of the series as well. Like, again, I like to Play, and I'm gonna read the first book. Next book that I read for the first quarter of the year was Mouse by Art Spiegelman. This book is basically like a graphic novel that talks about the Holocaust. I ended up not reading this book just because like I feel like when it comes to nonfiction stuff, I feel weird reading it, especially when it has to do with like really intense issues like this, like the Holocaust. Especially, I felt like the storytelling was done well, and if we were to give it an objective one, it would be 5 stars. But I just feel weird rating stuff like this. It's supposed to be informative and it tells about like your own like autobiographical, like personal experience. I just tend not to rate some of them, so I just didn't rate this one. But I did end up really enjoying it. It basically tells the story of like Art Spiegelman. It's actually autobiographical, but instead of the characters being written as human beings, they're kind of written as like these hybrid animal human beings. For example, the Jews in this story are written as mice. This actually does have some historical significance because of the fascist ideas of cleanliness and like the propaganda that was being marketed, Jews being rats and things started infesting society. So that's like why he ends up using mice as his main kind of metaphorical piece in the Jewish, you know what I'm trying to say. So that's basically one of the uses. The Polans are depicted as pigs and the Nazis are depicted as like cats. It's like that kind of thing. And then he just tells the story of like the intergenerational trauma, his parents going through the Holocaust, like his mother's suicide, and just like him trying to get the story of like what happened exactly during that period through his father. So that's essentially what the story is about. It's very, very good. I would highly recommend it. Some people just feel weird reading graphic novels that are written about important issues, but I think books like this, books like Persepolis, I think they prove that obviously graphic novels can be used as a good way to like talk about serious issues. Good form of storytelling. People always have this mistaken idea that like drawings and things like they trivialize like a story or don't have a space in adult storytelling. That's fucking wrong and false and just like very close-minded. So I would highly recommend reading this if you do want to pick up a book about the Holocaust. And I read it for class actually, but like I finished it. It's very rare I finish a book for class, so that should tell you enough, right? The next book I read was Rayberry by Jordan Ufueko. Bro, Rayberry was so good. This was a solid 5 stars for me. It was so good. Storytelling was very, very intense. The imagery was very vivid. The setting was very, very vivid and colorful. The story surrounds this girl named Terasai who basically has this like mother who she calls the lady. The lady is very, very distant from her. She doesn't really touch her daughter. She doesn't really contact or speak with her. And she's basically very, very distant. Terasai, our protagonist, is half jinn, half human. And she was made that way in order to be able to fulfill the lady's wish to kill like the monarch of this current kingdom and then just like reestablish herself as queen. And the only way she can do that and like really do it is by forcing her child to like be a wish maker, someone that has to follow her own wishes. So her child is a wish and she treats her as like that. Basically like her daughter belongs to her as like an object almost instead of like as a child. So obviously very problematic elements, but it's handled really, really well. Terasai ends up going to the kingdom, meets the boy that she's supposed to kill without knowing that's the boy she's supposed to kill, and eventually she ends up like loving him and finds it she can't bear the thought of killing him. A lot of things happen, of course, like things go wrong. That's the basic premise of the story, and they're all connected through the Ray, which is another thing I didn't bring up. The Ray. The Ray is essentially sun-like power entity thing that brings the monarch and his concubine. What do you call them? Lovers. Not lovers, family, whatever. But basically the Ray brings a family together for the monarch, so it's like different people around the kingdom with different powers, and they all come together and they share like this very close familial loving bond, and that's essentially what it was. And Terasai becomes one of those people, and that's why she doesn't want to kill the prince. I'm not sure if I explained that very like concisely, but it was so good. It talked about issues that like I don't normally see talked about like as well in YA. It talks about systemic problems, like it talks about the issues of having so many diverse groups of people like in one kingdom without properly acknowledging each of them as like their own like good group. It talks about the issue of basically like performative action as opposed to like proper action that actually changes like the problem. Like it's very, very good. It tackles a lot of issues that like I even talk about in my classes at university that I see within the world here. It's just very good at explaining that in a fantastical setting. It demonstrates it really well. Not only that, there's good romance. I think the relationships between the characters are really good. Like the cast of characters in the story are very, very good. It takes place in Africa, so it's an African fantasy. It's just overall really, really good. Highly would recommend. I enjoyed it so, so much. And I was reading it really fast and I had to stop myself because I wanted to make sure I didn't finish it too fast. Because you know when you just read a really good story, you don't want to like finish it too fast. That was basically my idea going in with this book. So if you're looking for a good fantasy book like this one, I would highly recommend Rayberry by Jordan Ufueko. The next book I read was One of Stray Dogs, Beast, which, you know when you like like read a book and then you read the fan fiction for the book, or like you consume any kind of like story through like any kind of media and you read the fan fiction for it. This is essentially fan fiction made by the author. Like it talks about an alternate reality in which the two protagonists, or like the protagonist and the antagonist, switch places and they live like each other's lives, and how like that's a different thing. So that's what it's about. Usually like alternate universe stuff, you don't really see that except for in fan fiction, because authors just don't delve into like the what could have been scenarios. Like you see spin-offs instead of like a series, like through like showing like the prologue of a story, or like showing like the epilogue of a story and exploring that. So it was really cool to see like a story I liked, by the way, Stray Dogs, but alternate reality version created by the author. That was fantastic. So I read that, I had to pick that up, I bought it, and it was fantastic. I really did enjoy it. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. It was just interesting to see like the two characters I enjoyed so much, the protagonist and like antagonist, switch places and how like their motivations changed, like their different demeanors, their character designs, because the character designs in this manga and in this anime are very sick. So see like that switch character design thing was just interesting. It's always just cool to see a protagonist turn dark or like be in a dark path. Like that's just really fucking cool. So that's what happened there. Read that, really enjoyed it. If you don't know what Bungo Stray Dogs is, it's basically like a story that follows this weird tiger who didn't know he was a weird tiger, as joined this armed detective agency, which is a group of people with supernatural powers that basically go around protecting the city through like government funds. So they're basically like government workers that like work on supernatural cases, or cases that just can't typically be solved by normal means. And then like their antagonist version of them is the Port Mafia, who also protects the city in their own way, but obviously does it through intense forms of violence with supernatural abilities. So it's cool. It was cool to see them switch places. I really enjoyed it. Would highly recommend it if you're a fan of Bungo Stray Dogs, or if you are an anime fan or manga fan, I would highly recommend Bungo Stray Dogs. The book I read after that was Between the World and Me by Tanahashi Coates. This book obviously is very popular. It won the National Book Award, I believe, and it tackles issues of racism. Essentially Tanahashi Coates like writes this book that's sort of a letter to his like teenage son who's moving through the world black, and obviously this is around the time when there was a lot of police violence on black people, violations of black bodies in general. He goes into depths about it, and he does different metaphors. Black people in general are used as a cushion to maintain this American dream that isn't as accessible obviously to black people. He explores it really well in this book. However, here's the caveat, and here's why I gave it 3.75 stars. It felt like it was written for a white audience, which is like interesting. It was written simultaneously like for like his son and for like a younger black generation, but I feel like it mainly was aimed towards a white audience that wasn't aware of what it was like to move through the world black. And like me having already known what that feels like, and having already like explored a lot of text and literature on racism and just like Africana studies and things like that, I felt like I didn't gain as much from reading this book. I felt like I was just like reading someone else's specific experience about it, but they state general terms that I already basically knew when it comes to exploring the world black. So because of that, I just didn't enjoy the book as much as I wanted to. I did find it interesting though, because Tanahashi Coates talks about his life and his own background, and I just find him to be an interesting figure in general, because he writes for comics, TV shows, books, obviously for literary magazines, all that kind of stuff. He writes a lot of interesting things, so I'm just interested in his life. But in terms of like actually learning things about like racism in America, I did not learn much, because like again, I'm basically like living that life. I do think it's still a valuable book that you should pick up if you have it on your list, or that you don't have it already. It explores a lot about like what it means to move through the country as black, so I think it's just a valuable book to pick up if you don't know what that means. And finally, the last book I read was Bungo Stray Dogs again, the manga. I read volume 20, which I won't spoil. I already explained the story. It's fire. It's very good. A big shock happened at the end of the volume. I didn't expect it. It was insanely good. I think I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was fantastic. Again, the protagonist and the antagonist are interacting. I just love the character interactions a lot, and there's an epic fight. So yeah, really enjoyed it because of that. But that's all for my wrap up for the quarter of the year. I can't believe we're already a quarter of the way through the year. Like, it's spring. I'm seeing like blossoms in the trees, and like green is starting to grow back, so that's pretty fucking cool. But that's all I have for you guys for now. Hopefully there's something here that you liked or would probably pick up yourself. Hopefully one of these interests you. Yeah, sorry about my voice too, if it sounds stuffy at some parts. I am recovering from a sickness, because you know when the seasons change, you just like, your body's like, what the fuck is going on? That's what happened to me. So apologies if my voice sounds a bit stuffy, but I'll try my best here. I just wanted to get this out for you guys in time. So that's all. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on all of my medias, of course. They're always linked down below, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye.